Here we go. Okay, recording is now started. My name is Jennifer Hand, and I am the Equity Initiative Director for the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania. Good evening, everyone. This evening, we have a very, I think, unique program. We've never tackled the idea of age bias before, of the generational differences that we all are aware of and work with. And tonight, we're taking the time to do that. And I will be passing this over to Giselle Concepcion, who has been working with us directly as a fellow over the summer. And I'm very pleased that she's agreed to do this with us. I wanted to mention this program is transcription enabled for closed captioning. So please feel free to turn that on. If you've never done this before and want to take advantage of closed captioning, I'm going to drop into the chat a little document that explains how to turn it on your end. This helps us all to hear and to see with greater precision. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen to get started. Okay. Oops. Okay. Start at the very beginning. The next generation of leadership. And we're going to start with the land acknowledgement. Here in Pennsylvania, we acknowledge the existence of the great nations of indigenous peoples, members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Erie, the Iroquois, the Munsee, Delaware, Shawnee, Ohio Valley, Susquehannock, and Lenape. We honor all the original peoples and an honor of the past and those who are living among us today. I also want to prompt everyone about the discussion guidelines that we always follow within our equity initiative. And I think these are good guidelines for all discussions, but particularly some of these which become a little bit more sensitive. So I ask everyone to show respect for yourself and for others, and to listen. It's more important than speaking, to stay to the subject at hand. And if you feel discomfort with any new ideas or perspectives, just practice self-care. Turn off your video, take a deep breath, and recognize that not all problems can be solved now. What we're doing with programs like this is to look for common ground and to dig deep into some of the questions that we can discuss together to find that common ground. And I also want to call our attention to the League of Women Voters Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion policy, which has been adopted from League of Women Voters US. It's adopted at the Pennsylvania level and also all local leagues. So as you can see, there's so many parts to division and bias within our culture. And one of these is, as I mentioned earlier, age bias. So, we have to think about how that impacts our ability to be welcoming of each other. It's all encompassing. Age and generation in our country is considered difference, and bias is a real thing. The treatment of elders is something that disengages many people who have many things to share in this culture still. And holding back of young people and failure to prepare and empower them also holds us back as a society. So we want to touch on that tonight. We want to talk about how the League can be a good example for our country moving forward. And now I just want to pass this over to Giselle. And I want to just mention that this is the League of Women Voters at Penn State campus. And I'm going to turn it over to Giselle to explain the photo and our panelists and to move forward.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Giselle Concepcion. I was a membership and equity fellow for the PA League for the spring and summer semesters, and I'm also one of the co-founding members and co-president of the League of Women Voters at Penn State. So essentially, our group really was born out of the exigence of just needing a nonpartisan space on Penn State's campus to do voting advocacy work. In a really polarized world, we found that students didn't know where to go to find nonpartisan information on voting. And also, we really wanted to just build a community to empower women on campus who were interested in political action. So this is most of the members of our executive board at Penn State. This is from a picture from last semester. And this includes our, Sydney, who I will introduce later as my co-president, Jenna, who is our liaison to the Center County League, Hope, who is our social chair, Tatum, who is our fundraising chair, Ashna, who is our treasurer, Kate, who is one of our PR chairs, and Mahari, who was formerly one of our DEI chairs. So really what we wanted to just illustrate with this webinar is how we can have a bit of conversations between intergenerational leaders and advocates, and how we can kind of build a pathway forward. So we have a number of panelists tonight who are here to kind of speak about their work with youth engagement. I have put together a list of their contact information and bios in case anyone is interested in connecting after this meeting and sharing ideas. And I just see that another panelist just joined, so that's wonderful. So I will put the link to that in the chat, but I just wanted to kind of take a moment to recognize all of our panelists. So first we have Kristen Davis, who is from Robert Morris University, and she will be speaking about her work with civic engagement series at RMU. And then we have Sydney Svishnik, who is my co-president of the League of Women Voters at Penn State. And I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but it's Angelica, who is from the League of Women Voters at Radnor, sorry. We also have Roberta Winters, who was one of the founders of the internship program that she was a part of. And then we have 3 members from PA Youth Votes, including Savinch, Zion, and Casey. So we're very excited to hear from all of them, and their information, like I said, is in that document. And I guess we can start. They're all going to kind of give a little bit of a summary of what they do. We just want all of them to kind of get through what they have to say, and then we'll open it up for anyone who has direct questions for them. So without further ado, Kristen, if you'd like to start.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Davis. I'm a recent graduate of Robert Morris University. I recently graduated with a degree in political science and economics this past May. So in the fall of 2020, I founded what's called the RMU Civic Education Series. Much similar to the League of Women Voters, I was looking to create a nonpartisan space on campus for students to learn. I found that as the election of 2020 was coming near, there wasn't any conversation, not even partisan conversation. And so it was really important to me that I try to help students figure out what was going on in the world of politics and do that with people who they actually trusted. And so what the RMU Civic Education Series really sought to do was to bring together faculty and staff members at Robert Morris, the people you see every day that you're comfortable sharing things about yourself with, and also bringing that together with other subject matter experts, whether that be elected officials, whether that be local school district staff members, kind of depended on the topic who we brought in. And so what we did is every month during the academic year, we would host a different panel series for students to attend and to be able to ask open questions at the end of the series. So we did this on a variety of topics, from communication styles in presidential debates to as local as what does my school board do and why do I care about that as a 20, 21-year-old. And so that ultimately culminated just before my graduation in actually co-hosting can't think of the right word right now, not a debate, but a forum with candidates in our local congressional district with the League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh. So we were able to co-host that virtually and give students an opportunity to hear from the candidates themselves, but also showing this importance of youth engagement, which I thought was really exciting. So now that I have graduated, I've transitioned that on to a wonderful successor. So the series will continue even though I have left the university. And it's been a really great resource for people to come ask questions. And again, hear from the people that they trust, whether that be faculty and staff members or just people who live in the local area that are subject matter experts.
Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to Sydney.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sydney. I'm a third-year student at Penn State, and I'm majoring in political science and public relations. So as Giselle said, we are both co-presidents of the League of Women Voters at Penn State. We kind of got started last semester, and it was pretty much a chow run semester last year. And now this year we are trying to hit the ground running with the midterm election. Some of the stuff that we're going to be doing this semester is tabling in places on campus to try and get students registered to vote. We're going to be hosting bi-weekly meetings where we will feature candidates in different organizations from the state, such as fair districts. We're also hosting a voter registration training with the Center County League. And some other things, we're going to be hosting candidates. We're trying to get a candidate forum together on campus. And as Giselle said, we just felt like this was a needed organization on campus because there is no nonpartisan political organization on campus.
Thank you so much, Sydney. Now we will move on to Angelika.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelika, and I'm currently a second-year student at Northeastern. And throughout high school, I was one of the founding members of the Radnor High School League of Women Voters chapter. So basically, in my junior and sophomore year, I worked on a project with Roberta Winters as an intern on youth voter registration. And then we were kind of trying to find a way about how we can really impact this project and how we can also like implement it into within schools. So me and a couple of other interns, we decided to start a Radnor High School League of Women Voters chapter. So currently we have around 60 student members, and throughout the year we work on tabling, and we come up with various events to help people or encourage seniors to register to vote. And we also have a graduation event where during the graduation rehearsal, we give every senior a cookie and also a voter registration form to remind them that they can now register to vote if they're 18. And we also work on outreach throughout the year. So we contact students once we know if they've turned 18. And together, like as a chapter, we're always planning events. And even though I've graduated, we do have a couple of other people that have stepped up into positions. So right now we have Zoe Margolis, who's the new president of the Radnor High School League of Women Voters chapter. And I'm really excited to see where she takes this project and how she can impact Radnor High School.
Thank you so much. And now Roberta Winters will also speak a little bit about that same project.
Hi, I'm very lucky to have the privilege of working with Radnor High School students. I was a former teacher in the school district, so that gives me sometimes a little leverage to get into the school system. And because we had an internship program sponsored by the Radnor Education Foundation, I piggybacked with that and began one for the League of Women Voters. But initially, the internship started because there was a league parent who had nothing for her daughter to do during the summer, and she suggested that she work with me to do something. So I had her work on the project for the voting rights in Washington, D.C., because I knew she was going to school in D.C., and that would be something she could engage and hopefully move forward. So that's where it started. And after that, I just kept trying and reaching out to students and offering the opportunity to do an internship on an issue that they wanted to deal with, either independently or with another peer. They also had the opportunity for working to receive service credits, which sometimes is needed for graduation, and also the opportunity to receive a recommendation from me, which made a big difference, I think, in some of the students' acceptances at colleges, because I could speak to my personal experiences with them, which they may not have otherwise had. It also gave them, in many cases, a subject to write about when they had to write that essay to go to college. So I think all those things made a difference. And one of the things that I found most interesting was students were very eager to do things like attend township meetings or school board meetings. And we sponsored a trip to Harrisburg, which was always popular in the spring when school was out, to take the kids because they've never been to Harrisburg or visit with legislators. So those were very exciting things that we worked on together. And it was always more exciting for me, I think, than it was for them. And I learned a lot on a variety of topics. And if you're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion in areas where we live, particularly, most of the diversity is in our student population and not necessarily in the residents. And because we have a lot of cultural diversity within our school community, we can bring that into the league, which otherwise we probably would not have been able to do.
Wonderful. So now we will move on to Zion, who is from PA Youth Vote.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zion Sykes. I'm a member of PA Youth Vote, a board member specifically. I'm also a member of the Penn State chapter of the League of Women Voters. But so a little bit about what I do. My role has shifted a lot in the past 2.5 years that I've been a part of PA Youth Vote. So much that the name changed at one point. It used to be Philly Youth Vote. So over time, I initially just joined as a regular member, sort of during the pandemic. And we would sort of, I just assisted with, general outreach, talking to people in DMs, sending them information on, when deadlines are approaching for elections, how they could get registered, what they need, all the general things that people might not know about. And I like doing it so much that, and I just continued with it, that I sort of, I guess, got promoted in a way to becoming coming in charge of what we'd I'm sorry, setting up local events and things like registration drives and info sessions, little informational meetings, presentations. I really became sort of I just really loved doing that. It brought me it just became my passion over time. And it sort of seeing that it sorry, I'm lost in my words right now. But rolling it back, I sort of grew to that position, setting up a lot of different things, working with Angelique Hinton, the executive director, and organizing, getting a feel for what that's like. And it really just made me understand a lot more about the civic process that we all have the option of participating in and why it's important. And later, I guess about a year and a half ago now, ended up being offered a position to sit on like the PA Youth Vote board. And with that, I do a lot of I guess managerial stuff. I forget the word, I'm sorry. And I sit on meetings that discuss, things like the budget, how we can better deal with reaching members of PAVA or members of our communities, sort of similar to some of the things Anchalika was saying. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. But just a lot of general outreach, making sure that our connections are good with different groups like the League of Women Voters, Bucks County, reaching out to these different communities that might have huge pockets of people that aren't registered, groups that are have been, historically disenfranchised or under invested in. Those are a lot of the sorts of target areas we have.
And now we will move on to Casey.
Hi, my name is Casey Seamus. I am a rising senior at Central High School. So I'm part of a program called Community Rising that partners with PA Youth Vote and Philly Bolt. And we do a lot of stuff that's similar. We've been mostly focused on issues in Philadelphia, such as gun violence. So I was part of the program last year, which was the pilot program, and I was offered the opportunity to become a coach this year, which I gladly accepted. And so we started off with like 8 people last year, and now we have approximately 30, which I'm really happy about. And basically we coach, there are 4 other coaches other than myself, and we basically teach other youth what we learned last year. So how to make like hard asks, like when asking somebody to help out with voter registration or to just register them. So right now we're focusing more on voter registration. We were actually supposed to have a voter registration drive today in Love Park, but that got canceled because of the rain. But there's going to be another one tomorrow around noon. But we've been focusing on voter registration and teaching youth that just because they can't vote doesn't mean that they can't be engaged in our communities and helping register other voters. Other than that, this summer, I'm part of a student-led newspaper called The Bullhorn. I am both a journalist and a photographer, and I think sometimes I would consider myself a photojournalist. I focus mostly on like the news rather than like opinionated pieces. I feel like that interests me more. And I think that the photos that I take probably say more than what I write about in my articles. I joined recently, so I don't have that many there, but I definitely think that I will be writing a lot more.
Thank you so much to all the panelists who have shared a little bit about what they do. I now just want to open it up to any of the audience members. If you have any direct questions for just one person or even just for the group that you're interested in asking, you can just raise your hand. Yes, Roberta.
I just wanted to thank all of the young people who are here today sharing what they've learned. And I was really remiss in not saying thank you enough to Angelica for all she's done to keep the league going in Radnor and for all the work she did in laying down the kinds of things students need to keep moving forward and staying engaged. And she's been doing a great job, and she's still on call for me. So I really appreciate it. And we try to integrate the students as much as we can in the league activities locally as well. So they attend our meetings when they are here and some of our special events as well. So we try to have it an integrated program as well as one within the schools. But thank you, Angelica. We couldn't do it without you.
Sandra Miller.
Thank you. I'm interested to know a little bit about the transition from going from the high school program to a program in a college. I don't know if I was trying to, some of you just did college and some of you were on the high school. Did anybody go from how receptive kids were at the high school level to how engaged you're finding people are at the college or vice versa? I don't know if anybody did both arenas, but it's two populations that I'm interested in understanding better.
I can talk a bit about that. So I also attended the same high school Casey goes to now, Central. I'd say that's a pretty involved, high sort of engagement school. So it's, I guess, not the best representation of all high school environments. But I did a lot of work, around different, a lot of different other high schools in Philadelphia, and there, it seems to me, at least, sort of there's a lot of interest in sort of getting involved right from the start. And I think I know for a fact multiple studies have shown, like, if you get engaged as soon as possible, you're more likely to continue over time. And I think that that's like one thing that's really different about, or really really different between the high school and college realm of civic engagement. Oops. Just because there's that great opportunity to begin there. Well, I mean, it also exists in college if people haven't sort of had the chance yet, but there's more of a chance to reach people because, everyone has to take these civics classes or government classes while people are sort of in the swing of things there, you have the opportunity to really reach them and connect it to their life to make it something that they can see happening. And whereas in college, at least so far I've experienced, there's just a lot of apathy, I guess. People sort of uh there is also a lot of, real engagement. People like Giselle, Sydney, everyone else, Angelica, um, really making incredible moves to engage everyone else. But I think that the one thing in college that you really just have to try and it's really difficult because there's people doing so many different things. Whereas in high school, there's mostly, for the most part, a lot of similar schedules. So with college, at least, I feel like there's just a real difference in the amount of or the different types of outreach you have to do, just because everyone is operating in such different ways. Did that answer your question?
Good point. College schedules is a whole different world than availability in high school. Thank you.
Just to add on to that really quickly, I second that fully. I think especially for high school students, it's like pretty contained, like high school students, they all have like the same schedule, like the 8 periods a day. So it's really easy to find like civics classes that you can go into and talk to the students. I know at my school, we had Roberta come in and talk to like some of the social studies classes. So it's like really easy to get the kids' attention. But I fully agree, like in college, it's really hard since everybody's doing their own thing and there's a lot more freedom for the kids. You kind of just have to think of like different ways to reach out to them.
Yeah, and Cinder, one thing I also wanted to add is with college students, I think you also really run into the challenge of location. Unless you grew up in the area you go to school, a lot of times it's a lot harder to be engaged in either the issues that are local to your school, where maybe you have no real sense of what the history is, or you might be hours away from the area in which you grew up, and so it's a lot harder to stay connected to those issues there. So I think then you kind of ask yourself the question, like, yes, I'm registered to vote, yes, I'm voting for people, but I don't really know the why behind all of that because I'm not home enough to know about those issues, but I'm not really at school enough and really invested in that community to know much there either. So I think that kind of is the other challenge of like, how do you give people the why behind why they're engaged when, maybe you're not really spending all of your time in one place the whole year.
I was going to mention that, in fact, in our area, we have several colleges and universities, and I found it's, as one of the other participants said, it's important to find the people that they trust and value. So like Cabrini College is like a government center there, and they actually have people who work for money to do things like register to voters and things like that. So we work with them to provide the materials. We will do a training on how to register voters, but then the students there take it over, not us. But they have people on board, and I know the same with Villanova. They want their students to be involved in the registration and efforts, and so we use their staff and their leaders there to do the work of registering voters and hopefully providing things like forums and things on their campuses with us.
Thank you so much. So we will now be moving to a bit more of a discussion-based format, unless anyone has any other questions.
I do have one more. Sorry, I was just waiting for somebody else to ask a question. Do you believe? I know you probably haven't been back to school terribly long. I think you guys just went back to Penn State. Do you believe, or do you have an expectation that the Dobbs decision will have any kind of motivating factor for college students to be more engaged?
Yeah, I can take that one. I definitely do believe that. We have had a lot of conversation just within our officers about that decision and how that could affect us. And we've even released a statement on like what our organization feels about that. But I definitely do believe that just from having other conversations with people who are not even in our organization. And there's a lot of outpouring on social media as well from people that I've seen at Penn State who are against the decision. So I definitely do believe that will make a difference this fall.
There was an interesting something out that the largest group of new registrations were women under 25. I believe I saw that yesterday or today. So it's an interesting opportunity for engagement that we might not have seen for a generation. So.
Now, would you like me to share the screen for the next
absolutely.
question? Okay, just hold on a second. There were a lot of questions in the chat. I just wanted to say thank you to Bruce for the question he asked and to the audience for responding with answers. So we've got an engaged audience among us. I'm going to share my screen now so we can go back to. Okay. We're going to move on, and we have a series of questions, and Giselle will pose them to our panelists so that we can get a little bit deeper into discussion. So I'm going to just start this slideshow with any luck. There we go. Okay, take it away, Giselle.
So our first question is, what has been your experience as a young advocate for voting rights? I'll pose this question to the panelists, but absolutely anyone feel free to jump in with any experience or additive knowledge you'd like to share.
I can get us started. So I think kind of to what I was speaking to a little bit earlier, I think while it's a really energizing area in which to work, it can be really hard to figure out what the why is for people. Something I experience every time an election comes around is, I know that you're registered to vote, but oh, I don't want to drive to my polling place. Oh, I don't have a mail-in ballot. It's reason after reason of why not to. And so I think one of the most challenging things being a young advocate for voting rights is, how do I convince my peers to do the things that I already care about? It's really easy to know why I do it. It's really hard to figure out how to get other people to recognize that for themselves. And I think a lot of times it's hard to facilitate those conversations as somebody who's really, really excited about it with people who just don't find that quite as interesting. I went to school for political science. Obviously, that's something that's really important to me. Sometimes when I'm talking to other people, they don't see that same value. It's not something that has really been felt to personally affect them yet. And so it takes a lot of digging to really figure out, how am I going to convince somebody that this is important, and to do that on a sustained basis, not just the one time I ask them when I see them before election day.
Yeah.
Kristen, that's a really good point, and something I'm have been out of college for like a year and a half, I guess 2 years time. But something I have run into with peers my age, especially people who live in PA or in my neighborhood, is like just kind of an analysis paralysis of all of the stuff that's happening right now. So, I have friends who know tons and tons and tons about what's happening on like an international global politics level. And then when I tell them about, voting in the primary for their like representative, or that we have new maps, it's a different conversation. And, for me, it's vice versa. So that's something I've come into contact with a lot recently, is it's like, there's just so much happening and not all of it is great, that I think running into the like activism exhaustion. Just people are tired. People are tired of being told that things are bad. So how do you, like, kind of to your point, how do you keep getting people to come advocate when it kind of seems a little pointless or just, insurmountable?
I want to interject quickly. I stopped the share because I think it's better to take a look at our faces, and we'll mention the questions as we move to the next ones. Okay, just if I didn't want to alarm anybody, that's what happened.
So I wanted to share my experience as a young advocate. So I'm not even of age to vote. I'm 17 and a half, so I won't be able to vote in the upcoming election, but next year I will be able to. So I talk to my friends who are either going to be who are going to be able to vote in the next election. And at Central, we do like advisory visits to senior classrooms to register as many people as we can before the upcoming election. And a lot of people say that there's no point in voting, that it doesn't matter if they register to vote because they're not going to vote anyway. And sometimes I don't know what to say to them because I don't really understand why they think that way. Because I know it's one vote, but if you register like 20 people, that's 20 votes. And as you add up, it's 100 votes, then it's 1,000 votes, then it's 20,000, then it's more and more and more. And as someone who can't vote yet, I worked as a poll worker in the last election, and it really is important because, first of all, I think that we need to have more accessible polling places. I know that in my neighborhood in the Northeast, there are a lot of people who there's a lot of people who speak multiple languages like Malayalam or Russian or Ukrainian, and you don't see those languages on a polling machine, which makes it a lot more difficult for people to vote. And I had to translate for, I think it was 6 or 7 people, and I was just working at the polling machine, so I had no clue how to vote either. But a lot of people would come up to me and ask me, they'd like open the little curtains and they'd be like, what do I do here? And I'm like, I'm not sure, let me go ask somebody. And then after that I learned how, and then I just think that it should, first of all, it should be more accessible, and second of all, I just feel like now that I was a poll worker, I understand how to vote, and not everybody decides to become a poll worker, so not everybody knows how to vote. So that's my experience as a young advocate.
I'd like to add something that as like a young advocate that sort of similar to what Casey said. Sort of, I remember at one point not being able to vote, seeing people make this conscious decision to not participate when I would have liked to, but it's been like there's like a fine line, I feel, between feeling this, like getting mad, like feeling just absolutely mad and confused by why you won't, but then also trying to understand this person's experiences and meet them where they are so that they can better, have a motivation in the future to want to make that impact on their own lives. Like, you know, there is this one example. We had a voter registration event in North Philly around Temple's campus, and just talking to people, hearing what they had to say was making me sort of feel like, I didn't really understand what these people were going through, like the things they had to deal with. How could they easily want to participate in this system that's failed them? But, having these conversations with them, letting them know that if they do choose to participate in this system, they have a better chance of, having things go right for them in the future than just than continuing the same cycle that has left them in this state. It's rough to sort of say that to a person. So I'd say that it's been difficult, but eye-opening at the same time.
Just adding on to that, I think we see a lot of like the same issue at the high school level, where kids might just not be interested in voting just because a lot of issues don't really impact them yet, like such as like recycling, even like is affected by voting, and even like property taxes. So it might just not be affecting like 18-year-olds at the moment. But something we found as like our chapter was like to find issues that could impact students directly. So I know a lot of people in my school are passionate about environmental change and preserving like land, and just like having more like community sustained efforts for like composting. So just giving students ideas really helped us about like things they might be passionate about. I think also Roe v. Wade, I know a lot of people like even texted me because they knew I did work in high school. They were like, hey, where can I register to vote? And like, where can I request like a mail-in ballot? So I think a lot of the times people just like helping them find an issue that they care about can really help them vote and like continue a cycle of voting.
And I think, right, too, as I was listening to the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia has a newsletter put out, regularly, and they always have, what we're reading, what we're watching, what we're listening to. And they recently put out, one of them was a podcast about the people who are really passionate, like all of you who are doing just such great work and who are advocating so often. Like, how do you face that burnout? Because I think part of it too is not just, the challenges in getting everybody else interested, is the challenge in you also need to have lives that you enjoy and not feel burnout, and it can be really exhausting. So I think that's just another challenge, is each individual advocate, everybody wants to save the world and everybody wants to register every college student ever, but I think giving yourself a little grace to do what you can is really important too. And letting yourself take breaks and find joy in your advocacy is really, really important.
Transition into our second question, which is, how does the intersection of race, disability, religion, or gender impact voting rights advocacy? So I'm going to post this question in the chat, and like I said, anyone feel free to answer, to give their input, to start a conversation.
I can try and start this off. I know just by my gender, and of course, with the ruling of Dobbs, I definitely feel more influenced to vote this fall. Not that I wasn't going to anyway, but I definitely feel like there's a lot at stake than I had felt prior to the ruling, I guess I could say. And it really, I could say, as a person who has had to take birth control for medical reasons before, I feel like that might be attacked. So it's definitely influencing me more to vote and to advocate for people to register this fall.
I think for me, the thing I really think about here is just making those perspectives available to people. I think when you think about voting rights advocacy, everybody has a different issue that really motivates them to actually, show up to the polling place or to turn in their mail-in ballot. And so this was, something I really tried to prioritize with the RMU Civic Education series was, every panel I wanted different perspectives to be there. I didn't want people from all the same political parties. I didn't want people from all the same ability levels or the same racial background. And that's because to me, it was really important that we were having the discussions at all. It doesn't really matter what the outcome is. It doesn't necessarily matter kind of what you leave thinking and whether that changed, but it matters that we had the conversation, that you heard from people who were different than you or different from each other. And so I think that's something that's so important in voting rights advocacy, is it's not necessarily, I want people to turn out to vote for this specific issue. It's that I want people to participate at all. I want them to vote for their reasons. Even if maybe they're not mine, even if maybe I don't agree with them, it's important to me that they voted at all. And so I think for me in my advocacy, that's something I really try to center, is helping people find their why, and kind of leaving my own personal beliefs out of it.
It's a great point.
Love it. So the question was, how does the intersection of race, disability, religion, or gender impact voting rights advocacy? Or you could even say impact your voting rights advocacy, just to state the question again, in case someone else wants to respond before we go on.
I can speak kind of a little bit to what this experience has been like, especially at Penn State creating League of Women Voters. I think that we had to confront a lot of issues in the past that the league has had in terms of, suffrage and and the division of like race when it comes to voting rights advocacy. And we had a lot of people of color on campus kind of identify League of Women Voters as being older white women who to kind of them felt a little bit daunting and intimidating to be around, or just kind of like were known for being exclusionary. And so we had to really work on changing that narrative. And I think that first started with having a very diverse and inclusive executive board and a very open-minded just club in general, with being open to anyone of any gender, any race, any ethnicity, any difference in thought, and just really sticking truly to our roots of being nonpartisan. And I will say that I think that all of these different kind of things that impact people's perspectives when it comes to voting are important to showcase and acknowledge, like Kristen was saying, but are also important to confront, especially when you're in a position of almost power and privilege when it becomes to being an advocate because of your experience. And so I think that especially when you're working with kind of a name that has a history, that you should address it so that you can move forward as an organization and really be inclusionary to your members.
Great point. There's a lot in that to even unpack what you just said, Giselle. Thank you.
Roberta?
I just wanted to mention that the research shows that people will register to vote with the highest probability is if they're being asked by people who look like them, and secondly, by somebody whom they respect. So it's important that when we go out and try to register in different communities or in different neighborhoods, we bring our members, we bring our friends who can bring their same image to them so that they feel comfortable and value each other's presence. Because I think that's what the students have helped us do in our league, is to bring different faces and different voices to our community.
I also want to add, just to add a little bit to what Roberta said throughout this thing, as a league member myself, I see our absolute survival depending on what you just said, Roberta, the fact that we welcome, that we embrace the younger folks who, we have to reach out and become more diverse. We have to become more welcoming. And if you stay centered in your own comfort zone, that can't happen. So I think if we look at just an opportunity to include and empower younger folks, we will be making great strides towards becoming more diverse and inclusive.
Anne?
Yeah, hi. So when you mentioned the nonpartisan role of the league, I just wanted to share that this summer we've had 2 different incidents, and one recent actually, of people that reached out to our league, considered joining. But when I had a discussion with one person and our membership chair had a discussion with another person. And after talking with these people, they realized that the league was not a good fit for them. So even though we try to be welcoming, but when we share not just the mission, but the nonpartisan nature of the league, a lot of these people just felt, yeah, this wasn't good. And it ran the spectrum. I mean, it was interesting for me. The person I spoke to was, well, all rah, rah, we have to get people out to vote kind of thing, but he wasn't going to do that in a nonpartisan way. The other person was an election denier. And this person just wasn't going to accept our mission or our role. So it runs the gamut. It's an interesting time we're in, trying to recruit new membership and diversity, but we have to be true to, the mission and our nonpartisan policy.
So on that note, our next question is, what inspired you to begin doing civic action work? And if you are a member of the league, why did you choose to join the League of Voters? I think what Anne said is a great segue into this question, and I'll post it in the chat.
And we can start with panelists and then move on. We'll give the panelists a chance to speak first.
So I think overall, I began doing civic action work when I became a freshman in high school. I kind of got inspired by my older brother, who is now a junior in college at Yale. He basically he started doing what I was doing, but then I found other organizations and I kind of got into that. And then I realized how important it is. So I feel like I kind of got started in high school. I think Central was a great um, place to find organizations and connections when it comes to civic engagement and organizations like PA Youth Vote.
For me, I'd also say it sort of began in high school. I guess my 10th grade, my year, sophomore year of high school, I was just sort of getting interested in a lot of the different things that surround civic engagement, like, figuring out the why, which is, like was said earlier, the most difficult thing to answer. Um, and then I found my why. Like, the year after, sort of towards the beginning of the pandemic, I saw a lot of policies, being enacted or the lack thereof surrounding, pandemic, and I lost my grandmother to it. And I thought, I had a lot of thoughts about that, trying to figure out who to blame and what could have stopped this. And although, I don't think there's ever one single answer to that, I think that I really wanted to figure out a way for this to happen to less people. And I thought that, getting people involved in, you know, the process that decides it, picking their legislators, educating them on these things was one way to go about it. And I knew about my school's civic engagement club, and I joined that. Subsequently, other things, PA Youth Vote, and I just kept going from there. Oh, and I forgot. I chose to join the League of Women Voters because like I mentioned before, we've worked with that PA Youth Votes, worked with them before, partnered with them on uh, different items, activities, presentations. I just sort of got the sense that it's truly an organization that's focused on community and sort of working to better everyone, and that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I'll say for me, when I founded the Army Civic Education series, it was really about filling a gap on campus. As I said, like there wasn't any conversation. It wasn't partisan, it wasn't nonpartisan, it was just kind of silent. And for me, knowing how important the election of 2020 was, it was important to me that I at least try to help start those conversations for people. And for me, those relationships are what's most important. That people see me as somebody who wants to talk to them, not as somebody who wants to persuade them. And so that has kind of been the guiding principle of the civic education series over the last 2 years. And that did kind of end up motivating me to join the League of Women Voters for many of the same reasons. I really was passionate about youth engagement work, and I knew that the League was going to be a really big partner in that, especially in Pittsburgh. And so that's why I made it a priority my senior year to really partner with the League to find ways to improve their reputation on campus so people knew they existed, but also to kind of bring that presence to the League of young people who were passionate about civic engagement just as they were. And so from there, we've really been able to build this relationship of having those conversations and thinking about what are the better ways we can engage not only our colleges and universities in the area, but also our high schools, so that those individuals really feel like they're empowered. They're not just, visiting the League and hearing what the League has to say. They're actually engaged in that work and really contributing to those conversations.
Yeah, I think going off that, one of the reasons I also decided to join the League was because they were looking to do something with youth voter engagement. And I thought that was really interesting. And as Roberta mentioned, she made the internship program. So I kind of just applied to a bunch, and I was like, let's see where this leads to. And then I got matched with the League of Women Voters. So then I like talked to Roberta, and then she gave me a bunch of ideas on what I could do and like how I could make an impact in my community. And I ended up choosing the youth voter registration project. And then kind of from there, we just like went and we just kept brainstorming ideas with everybody. And I think also one of the really cool things about the league is that there's so many different people and everybody comes from like a different place and everybody has like a different background. I remember at like my first meeting, I met like a lawyer and I thought that was just really cool. So I just thought it was really interesting just to meet like all these different people. And Roberta even took us to meet the PA representatives at the state capitol. So we got to talk to Dalen Leach and some other representatives. Also Mary Gay Scanlon, we got to talk to her. So I think it was just like a really cool way to even learn about things yourself and also like make an impact in your community.
So if any,
I have a point, not from the student perspective in high school, but from the teacher perspective. Traditionally, it's been that teachers initiated voter registration. How many were registered because their teacher suggested registration? Nobody? So in the current environment, there are many districts such as Central Bucks where teachers are going to be gun shy, or if they want to keep their job, they're not going to initiate any voter registration. I don't know across the state what districts are discouraging voter registration, but I would suspect that it's happening.
Roberta, do you have anything to say about to that with your experience, level of experience in the schools?
All I can say is the times are very different. And I believe that the students can do things that teachers can't do. One of the things that I have begun to do is involve my students to write articles for the school newspaper. So that seems to be another way to influence opinion. So why is it important to vote in local elections, or what's going on with redistricting? But to get them involved so that they write opinion pieces in the school paper, and that can make a difference. The other thing is, as an adult, if you can connect with the PTO communicators, the school district does not usually impact the PTO. That's an independent group. And you can always put something in the PTO newsletter about, voter registration deadline, or don't forget if you've got college students to make sure they apply for mail-in ballot, that kind of thing, which is totally appropriate. And parents can do that when you don't use the teacher guide. So if you have parents, or if your students have parents who can help with the PTO to spread the word outside of the quote-unquote teacher framework, there's always a way to do it. You just have to work around.
I know that in elementary level, PTOs are very active. I know in the high school level, for the schools that I talk to and the school board members I talk to, PTOs are basically non-existent on the high school level. Now, there may be exceptions. The other thing is there's this whole other element of the state that probably doesn't get impacted by League of Women Voters, and that would be rural counties. There is another way. I've talked to a few people about a future project from the one I have now involving Girl Scouts. And I've had good feedback. And that being high school Girl Scouts.
Right.
There are 40,000 Girl Scouts across the state. They are in 3 groups or councils. That means there's only 3 executive directors. That means there's only 3 people to talk to get buy-in. There are 4,000 high school Girl Scouts. And Girl Scouts are very different than Boy Scouts They're like the YWCA, all about women's empowerment. So one could look at Girl Scouts in high school as a target market, nobody else, as a Trojan horse to initiate. Why? Because 95% of voting groups, look at this screen, 95% of voting groups in high school, in college, in communities are female. So that's for the future. I haven't got the salesperson yet. Obviously, I am not the salesperson, but somebody said 2 years ago they would do it. So I have to hold them to their yes. And I'd love to see the state league sponsor this. On the other hand, that may be a detriment because, as I said in the comments, the league is not viewed as nonpartisan. We can all dance on one foot and say it's nonpartisan, but in some ways it's really not.
Thank you, Bruce.
Before you mute me.
No, we're not going to mute you at all. That's just amazing. I'm just thinking about the time and I don't know. Giselle, do you want to try for question 4 before we close, or what do you think?
We could go to
Just
question 5.
real fast to Bruce's comments. I think, Bruce, I'm pretty sure, I think I looked this up. Girl Scouts have a badge.
I know they do. There's American
Civic education.
I've already talked to
Civic
people.
ed.
I know that, but
Okay.
they could still be the Trojan horse. Because here's the important part. They are in areas of, they're white, they're rural and ex-urban. They're not mostly in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Yes, they have sections, but it is a rural white thing in the places where the league is not, where wokeness is not. Now, if the league sponsored it, that would probably be a detriment. So I have to find another group to sponsor. I don't know what yet. I have to get that salesperson because they have a way, they can, she could get to anywhere in the state, but to get who would sponsor it, I'm not sure. But I see the league politically as being not the right group to sponsor, maybe because of the troubled times. Somebody say you said, whoever you said, I'm sorry. And the other thing is in a district like Central Bucks, which a few folks don't follow, it gets a lot of New York Times coverage. Central Bucks is Doylestown district is the 3rd largest in the state, featured regularly in statewide press and the national press for the school board leaders. You would be an idiot as a teacher in high school to initiate any kind of voter registration.
I want to just say something real quick to that. Sorry, I won't take long. I think that Trojan horse analogy is really good, sort of needing more people, but I don't think we really need these Trojan horses when we have so many students inside already that want to do this work and just need the resources, groups like Pew Youth and these ideas that you're saying, they're definitely bridging that gap, and it's increasing as time goes on.
Not every district has a Tom Quinn. You are at Central in Philadelphia, where 80% of people are Democrats. You go to rural counties, Center County, outside of, is it Center? Yeah, outside of where Penn State is, the city. It's all, Stephanie Borowitz, the state rep, is not jumping up and down for youth voter registration. For those who don't know who Stephanie Borowitz is, she is a very conservative Christian fundamentalist state representative from Center County.
I have a question for the panelists. What do you guys, this is mostly just so I can know too, ideas always. What do you guys do when you're feeling downtrodden about this work? Like, what's your, this can be as innocuous as like going for a walk, but like, what do you do when you're feeling downtrodden and, that sort
of. I know Giselle and I work hand in hand together, and I feel like we vent to each other a lot, and then we'll just kind of throw it. We're like, we're just gonna come back to this later, and then we kind of take a break from it and do our own thing. And I know just myself, I'll like watch a movie or watch some TV or read a book.
That's awesome.
You know, I know for me, I tend to do in terms of stuff that's still kind of connected to the work, but maybe is a little less direct. Like I like to do a lot of text banking. So it's something that for me is a little bit less like I am in the community talking to people that I know all the time, and maybe feeling kind of downtrodden from people who are very resistant to getting registered. So I participate in an organization called Movement Labs, which is a progressive leading organization, just as a disclaimer. But I like to do text banking through them. It allows me to reach areas all across the country on a wide variety of issues. And so for me, it gives me something a little bit different to get energized about that requires a little bit less, I guess, work on my part.
Yeah. I feel like we're all looking for ways to avoid burnout, you know?
This is awesome. I'm looking at the clock, Giselle. It's 7:10, and we were thinking about the need for everyone to have their dinner this evening. So we'd like to close right on time, if that's okay. I was wondering if we wanted to just ask one wrap-up question, Giselle. What do you think about that? I'll
Sounds
let
good.
it up to you. Yeah, go for it. Whatever you would like to leave as an impression, as a last thought for everyone, give them all a chance to respond. A takeaway.
You want to
perhaps.
do like, oh yeah, okay. So yeah, we
Yeah.
would really just love to hear everyone's kind of takeaway from this discussion.
Yeah.
I know when it was right about to get super interesting, we wanted to cut it
Yeah.
off, but we do have a lot of, I know, college students. It's the first day of class here at Penn State, and I'm sure that a lot of you have a lot going on. So we just want to make sure that we wrap up on time. But I would really love to hear everyone's takeaways from this conversation. I think my biggest takeaway is that I think it's really inspiring to hear how many people are passionate about this work and see so many people together in one space, even if that's a virtual space, who are like-minded, and how we just span, so many different generations and experiences. And I think that's very inspiring to see. So I will pass it off to Sydney since she's right next to me on my screen.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna piggyback off of that. It is really inspiring to see people of all ages on here. It gives me hope that, I feel like sometimes Giselle and I and Zion are feel like the only people on Penn State's campus who are doing stuff sometimes. And it gives me hope that there are other people at other campuses and in high school still doing the work that we are also doing.
And you can pass it if you'd like to the next one. Do it popcorn style, Sydney.
Kristen, you're right next to me, so I will pop one to you.
Yeah, I think for me, the big takeaway is that, to remember it's about the people and it's not necessarily about, the number of registrations that you have at the end of the day. Even if you have a really good conversation with someone, it was still worth the time you took to do that. That's something that I really try to remember, even as frustrating as it may be sometimes, that to even give somebody my time, to give somebody the willingness to have a conversation, even if at the end of it we don't agree, nothing has really changed, that was still important. And that is still something that will probably come back to them in a couple days, in a couple months, in a couple of years that was important to them. And so I think, as we continue to do this advocacy work and think about, how we bridge all of these different gaps that we are trying to, that is about the people and it's about building relationships with people, because that's what they remember. They don't remember all the stats about voter registration and, this issue is important at this day and time. They remember the conversations and the fact that you invested time into them, and they will want to give that back to you at some point. So I will popcorn Zion with that.
Yeah, I guess my greatest takeaway would just be sort of the diversity and experience here. I know that there's already so much, but it's just great to, sort of hear and see people's passions and where they've, sort of come from their journey to this moment, sort of here. And sort of like everyone else said, it's just really inspiring, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. And I'll pass to Casey.
So basically, to reiterate what everybody else is saying, I'm not a part of this organization, but now that I was a part of this meeting, I would love to be. I appreciate that everybody puts in so much effort into caring about civic engagement and voter registration, because we don't know what's going to happen, and we know that voting and utilizing our voices is probably our biggest power, and we just need to continue fighting. And then I will pass it off to, I don't know who's next. But whoever wants.
I can go next.
Yeah.
I would agree with like everybody about their biggest takeaways, especially I think one of the things is sometimes you can feel like a little bit alone and like you're the only one working on this, but it's really nice to see like everybody's working kind of like towards the same goal, and we have a lot of like the same obstacles that you have to overcome. So it's just like really nice to have like an open conversation between everybody and just talk about all the work that's being done, not only in your county, but also all across the state. And I'll popcorn over to Roberta next.
I was going to say that the best part of this is how much we learn from each other. And I think, you know, when things don't go your way, do what you do when you have a crossword puzzle, just walk away and come back to it. And then somehow solutions occur. If you think this is frustrating, this is easy. I was on the state board dealing with fracking, and I did that for several years. And it was like, talk about banging your head against the wall. This is a piece of cake compared to fracking. But every decision is a political one, and every decision depends on your vote. So it's important that you get out there, keep up that work, and make that difference, because it's everybody's responsibility.
Is there someone yet on the panel that has not done a final takeaway? I think everyone has gone. Pam, would you like to chime in? You've been, if she's still there.
Me? Sam Anthony?
Yes, you. Yes, you.
I'm here. Hello. I think, I don't know, I just feel very energized by this panel. I was very excited to come tonight. I think you guys, I know some of you, I've vaguely Zoom met a couple others. I think you guys are just incredible and so passionate and doing such awesome work. So I feel energized and not burnt out at all. So thank you guys for that so much. Really awesome insights.
Well, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, I just want to say thank you to all of you who showed up, to everyone in the audience who participated and had ideas. I think we all grew somewhat by that process. And I want to offer special gratitude and thanks to Giselle Concepcion for what she has done, not only to this evening, but over the course of the summer, working for us, helping to put together materials and assets to help us go forward. I am energized to know that there are so many people, young people who believe, who are not discouraged. And I'm also empowered by all the generations who showed up this evening to participate in this, because it really shows just how connected we all are. And I appreciate the time that you spent, all of you. Giselle, would you like to say a final word before we close?
Thank you so much for coming and being a part of this, and to all the panelists who I reached out to. I really appreciate you taking the time to participate. It definitely means a lot to me. And I would just like to say thank you, and I really appreciate hearing all of your perspectives. I'm going to put the link in the chat just one more time for the kind of doc that has everyone's information on it. I just want to make sure that if any of you are interested in connecting after this, I'd be more than happy to, facilitate that or anything like that. And I really hope that you all reach out to each other if you feel inspired by anything that anyone here has said. And I look forward to working with many of you in the future. And also please reach out to me if you ever want to talk, collaborate. And yes, thank you. And thank you all for participating.
Thank you. Thank you much. Have a great evening.